All right. Let me know when you're ready, Dylan.
And you're good.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to Ridgewood Waters Virtual Open House. This is the second of two sessions. The first was held on the evening of April 6th. My name is Richard Calby. I'm the director of Ridgewood Water. I'll be your host for today's event. In prior years, we have hosted this program in person. Although we are missing that opportunity to engage, we are very excited to host this live virtual event for consumers in the Ridgewood Water Service area. The first event on April 6th went very well, and we're very much looking forward to today's event as well. So thank you for joining us. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but feel free to use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen to post any questions or raise your hand during the question and answer portion of the presentation, during which we will allot 30 minutes for questions. Any questions not answered during today's session will be addressed and posted to our website. Additionally, this session is being recorded. It'll be available on Ridgewood Water's website and on the Village of Ridgewood YouTube video page. If you are viewing the recorded version and have questions, or if there's something you don't think about today and want to ask later, please feel free to contact us at 201-670-5520 or by email to cswater@ridgewoodnj.net. Again, that's 201-670-5520 or by email to cswater@ridgewoodnj.net. So let's get started. Tonight we have four speakers covering 5 topics that will give you an overview of our operation and lead into the important topic of emerging contaminants, specifically PFAS contamination and Ridgewood Water's treatment plan. We're going to talk about customer service. We're going to talk about water treatment. We're going to talk about our geographical information systems mapping, water distribution, and of course, PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and then a lot of time for question and answers. But before we begin, let me give you a little bit of a system summary for those of you who don't know much about Ridgewood Water. Ridgewood Water is a public utility owned and operated by the Village of Ridgewood. We serve over 60,000 customers daily across 20,300 billable accounts or service connections. We obtain our water from 52 groundwater wells. That water is then piped and treated at 31 treatment plants, or what we call points of entry into the system. We maintain 1,751 fire hydrants for firefighting purposes, over 5,700 valves for isolating leaks in sections of the distribution system that prevents us from having to shut off many customers during breaks. We have 10 water storage tanks storing 14 million gallons of water in the system, and over 290 miles of water mains to distribute the water to all the customers every day. In addition to all that infrastructure, we also maintain interconnections with other systems. 2 of those are live throughout the year, and 10 are for emergency purposes only. Now, a little bit more about the background of our sources. The 52 groundwater wells account for 90% of the water treated and distributed into the system from our Brunswick aquifer. A fun fact about our wells, some of the wells are as deep as the Empire State Building is tall, over 1,000 feet, but most are generally in the hundreds of feet depth range. The other 10% of our water is purchased and used to primarily meet summer peak demands, and we purchased that from the Borough of Hawthorne, which is also a groundwater system feeding from the Brunswick aquifer, and from Suez Water, which is a combination of both groundwater and surface water. Ridgewood Water's daily demand in the system from our customers ranges from a low of 5 million gallons a day to a high in the range of about 17 million gallons a day in the summer peak months. Most of this peak usage is associated with residential irrigation. To help manage this peak and lessen the concentration of PFAS in the water, Ridgewood Water will also be adding a third purchaser in the future, starting as early as 2022, and that is Passaic Valley Water Commission, who has a much lower concentration of PFAS in the water and a higher volume of water available for our use. So I'm going to stop there with the introduction. I'm now going to turn it over to Dan Timoney. Dan is our Ridgewood Water business manager, and he's responsible for managing department affairs and specifically the customer service, billing, and metering divisions. Dan is going to talk about customer service.
Thank you, Rich. Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Ridgewood Water has been planning an overhaul of customer service leading up to the rollout of 3 new user-friendly tools in the coming weeks. The first being a new Ridgewood Water website. The second, a transition from our current payment processing vendor MCC to InvoiceCloud. And the third is a software as a service portal called WaterSmart. We'll talk a lot about that coming up. So the new Ridgewood Water website, when we set out to design a new website, our goals were for it to be user-friendly, organized, and aesthetically pleasing. We wanted to produce easy-to-find direct links to our most accessed items and those that are most used by our customers. We also will be featuring interactive tools such as address lookup during annual hydrant flushing and service line material lookup as well. There will be a frequently updated news items section, and the website will be mobile friendly and directly linked to all of our social media platforms. Just to give you an idea, this is the preliminary design of our homepage at the top. Below, you can see some of the most frequently accessed items in the tiles. And once we do roll out, we encourage people to let us know what you think about the new website. If you have suggestions or thoughts, we are more than open. The next technology improvement that we'll be rolling out is using InvoiceCloud for payment processing. InvoiceCloud is much more user-friendly. We also think that the biggest takeaway and the biggest improvement in this process for our customers is that previously, with Visa representing more than 40% of card market share, we previously couldn't take Visa cards. And so many of our customers were simply unable to take advantage of the online bill pay options that we had offered. So again, in addition to this new Visa acceptance, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover are all available payment methods, and we think that'll be a huge boost for our customers. And lastly, single sign-on integration with WaterSmart, which again, we'll talk about in a second, means that you're only gonna have to kind of go to one place to look at all things related to your account, to pay your bill. Everything is built right into the frames of WaterSmart themselves. You're not gonna have to get rerouted to a third-party vendor site. So let's talk about WaterSmart. We at Ridgewood Water view WaterSmart as a game changer for our customers. It is a software as a service platform for enhanced customer engagement and data analytics. Our goal is to provide customers with more frequent water usage data and consumption analysis and analytics. It features a two-way communication platform option using WaterSmart's group messaging function. It will be featuring water usage insights and conservation strategies, along with myriad self-service tools, including integrated bill pay and leak alerts and use threshold notifications. This is something that we've been asked for, that our customers have asked about in the past a bunch, and we were really happy to now have a tool to accomplish that. So let's talk about the customer portal. WaterSmart will essentially act as a one-stop shop for all Ridgewood Water services. Think to how your PSE&G or your Verizon bills are organized. This is really a place where you can go for all information regarding Ridgewood Water. That'll be news items, that'll be outages, that could be how you pay your bill, leak detection. Everything is going to be in one place. We're really excited about that. Every customer will have access to a personalized customer portal. And it's, again, mobile friendly and integrated bill pay. No need to be rerouted to any third-party sites. On the communications front, customers will be able to select their preferences of choice as far as communications go. And going forward, you'll be able to send and receive communications according to only these preferences. So if you're someone who only wants to receive emails, select email as your sole communication preference. You won't receive phone calls, you won't receive texts. So let's talk about consumption analytics. One of the things that we have struggled with at Ridgewood Water is that for several years, we have been reading meters monthly, but billing quarterly. So what that means is we have had information available to us and that we've been able to use internally, but we've had no way to push that out to our customers. And that valuable monthly read data gives customers better insight into their water usage patterns, seasonal trends, and will help to identify potential leaks, saving you, our customers, significant money. So how does leak detection work? So there's two-way communication regarding potential leaks that can help to save money and reduce water waste. On the utility side, we'll be reaching out to some accounts proactively each month to ask customers to check for leaks on the property because of an observed increase in water usage. Based on the amount of water used, a potential leak might be associated with a higher likelihood of being, say, a running toilet rather than an irrigation leak. Customers can then respond to our communication about a potential leak directly. And based on whether or not a leak was found, we can then work together to initiate next steps. So how do you register for WaterSmart and how do you access it? In the coming weeks, all Ridgewood Water customers will be receiving a welcome letter physically in the mail. All you need is to access your account number and your zip code, followed by a simple registration, just email and a password creation. Every account has in our system will have a WaterSmart account already created on the back end. You simply need to sign in to access it. This tool, which again is free for all customers, will provide us with a platform to give you the information that we've had internally, but also offer you many more self-service and communication tools. And we're very excited to roll this out to you in the coming weeks.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Definitely some very exciting stuff coming away to customers that is going to help Ridgewood Water further its goals of water conservation, giving customers the ability to better manage their accounts, find leaks before they happen. In addition to that, giving the utility a better means of communicating with customers about such issues as PFAS. So that's great, exciting stuff. So talking about PFAS and treatment, we're going to talk a little bit of background about what water treatment actually is. So with us today is Ryan Fury. Ryan is a Ridgewood Water chemist. He's responsible for the Ridgewood Water lab and all the testing and associated compliance. So Ryan's going to give us some background on that and a few other things.
Thanks, Rich. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's really great to have you all. So our treatment division is basically responsible for operating, maintaining, and sampling all the water that we pump from the ground that we treat at our wells and then push out into the distribution system to our customers. So we do that. The way that we do that is by chemically treating our water supply with sodium hypochlorite for disinfection purposes, so basically bacteriological disinfection, and polyorthophosphate addition, which is for corrosion control treatment. So essentially, that's just lead and copper protection for our customers. On a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week basis, we take chemical residual readings at all of our points of entries in order to ensure that our treatment's optimized and that everything is working properly. So we do that with online instrumentation, and we have trained technicians that go to the well houses and take point of entry samples to ensure that everything is working properly. On a daily basis, we do bacteriological sampling, both at our well houses and out in the distribution system to ensure that no contamination is occurring. And we also take what are called water quality parameters on a biweekly basis, which is essentially just looking at our corrosion control treatment and making sure that lead and copper contamination is not occurring out in the system. On a weekly basis, we take a volatile organic compounds readings at all of our points of entries. So that's essentially just pesticides and organics that are produced, out in the ground or from man-made materials. And we also do quarterly sampling for primary and secondary contaminants. And we also just started implementation of PFAS sampling on a quarterly basis due to the new regulations that were just established. If we move on to the next slide. So this is one of the more interesting things that we've been a part of, and it's really exciting going forward, is pilot studies. So basically what pilot plant studies are essentially small scale water treatment devices that we take in a controlled setting, and we perform various tests and experiments on them to see how we can optimize our own treatment strategies and see how, how we can make, not only the quality better for our customers, but maybe potentially help with financially, help maybe reduce costs. So with that, we've been using these pilot plant studies in a controlled setting. So essentially what that means is that, we isolate it from our system. And we perform these various experiments and these treatment strategies on these small units and without jeopardizing the health of the distribution system. So these have been, very exciting. We've been partaking in this over the past couple of years, and it's a very proactive approach towards treatment strategies that aren't really utilized in a lot of utilities or even in private companies, to be honest with you. And, it's an exciting thing because, it helps us, really take a look at what our distribution system is doing, how we're treating our system, how we can better treat it, efficiently and optimize it and make sure that we're providing the best water quality for our customers, and at the best possible rate that we can. A lot of our studies that we've been partaking in is one of them was our pipeline study with our newly formed interconnection with Passaic Valley to help with water demand and water usage, which has been, very exciting and very good actually, because, it actually proved to have good results. So, and we actually are partaking in a PFAS study with the EPA and the NJDEP, which is pretty exciting. And hopefully, we get promising results with that as well. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. So this slide right here is basically just a general overview of how lead gets into our water supply, right? So lead's obviously a hot button issue in the water industry, and as well it should be. It's not something that's great, obviously. So this is just kind of giving you like a generalized overview of like how it actually happens. So basically what happens is lead solder and lead service lines or copper service lines were used back in the past for plumbing purposes, for, distribution mains and so on and so forth, to help bring water from the utility out to the customers, which is you guys. So basically what happens is as water is flowing over pipes or lead soldered joints or copper pipes, that interaction between flowing water and the pipes or the joints is going to rub, right? And it's going to be like a friction thing. So what you would envision is like when you rub your hands together, you can start to see, some particulates form in your hands. And it's kind of like the same exact idea. That friction, that water flowing over pipes is going to degrade the chemical bonds for lead and copper, and it's going to leach into the water supply. And that's how basically lead and copper contamination occurs in a utility. So what we do to ensure that doesn't occur is we implement corrosion control treatment. So what, like I was saying to you guys before, everyone before, was we add a polyorthophosphate inhibitor to the water supply and to basically ensure that this lead and copper contamination doesn't occur. Polyorthophosphate is just essentially just a food grade additive. It's used in daily foods that everyone will be consuming on a daily basis. So it's not something that's like out of the blue and it's gonna cause any negative health effects. And what it does is it forms a small biofilm in the pipes. So basically what we want you to picture is, you have a pipe and then you have flowing water. So flowing water on a bare pipe is going to, have that friction and it's going to leach lead and copper into the water supply and cause contamination. By adding this polyorthophosphate into the pipes, what it does is it creates kind of like a shield, right? So you have the pipe and now you have like a barrier in between the water and the pipe. And now you don't have that interaction anymore. You don't have that friction that's occurring. So now that's how we protect you all from lead and copper contamination. We implemented this corrosion control technique in April of 2016, and from our results, they've been nothing but stellar ever since then. If we can so this is a snapshot of that implementation from 2016 up to our current point of 2021. And as you can see, both lead and copper has been going down, ever since from 2016. So you see 0.006 for lead and 0.245 in 2016. Up to current days, we have non-detect levels for lead, which is fantastic, and 0.006. So obviously there's a reduction going down from, for lead and copper in our system once we implemented this corrosion control inhibitor. And it's been, effective ever since. And we, like I said, with the pilot studies, we're trying to optimize it even better and, hopefully make it, make the results that much better going forward in the future. So just another recap of the results analysis. So the lead action level is 15 parts per billion. Our levels that we had as of last year were 0 parts per billion, copper 1.3 parts per million. Our levels were 0.00645 parts per million. And these were actually our lowest lead and copper results in the history of Ridgewood. So, it's something that we're very proud of. We take pride in, and, we take pride in, giving you guys the best water quality that we possibly can. So this is just a little snapshot, a little overview of what has been happening in the system. And if you guys want to have more information on it, you can go actually on the NJDEP website. If you just type in NJ Water Watch and then look up Ridgewood Water, you can see all this data online. So it's exciting things, and we're looking forward to continue to give you guys the best water quality that we can.
Great, thank you, Ryan. I think it's important that you pointed out the lead issue, because it's probably one of the most prevalent questions that we get. Even now with the introduction of PFAS, people are still always asking about lead in the water, and lead is primarily at the home. And it's important that we're providing the treatment to make sure that you don't get that corrosion in the pipes. But if you do believe that you have a lead issue at your home, please contact us. We have lead test kits that are available. We could drop them off at your home. It's done through an independent lab, not tested by Ridgewood Water. The results go directly to you. And then from that point, if there is any detection, we could help guide you as to where that's possibly coming from in your home. Before we go to the next speaker, I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, you could post them as we go along. We're going to answer them all at the end, unless it's something technical regarding the presentation. But please keep the questions coming, and we'll address them all at the end. So up next, we're going to have Neil Gallone. Neil's going to talk to us about Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. Neil supervises the Ridgewood Water Mapping Group. He's responsible for asset management, all our field programs, customer resources, and supporting our staff in the field with their mapping needs and information. So take it away, Neil.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I guess I'd like to start with what is a GIS. And as Rich said, it's a geographic information system. That's what it stands for. However, essentially, it's a database that also provides the ability to capture and analyze spatial and geographic data, such as water assets. Here at Ridgewood Water, we've maintained a GIS for 30 years. However, it's mostly been used by staff for markouts and planning repairs or maintenance jobs. But over the last 2 years, we've been migrating the GIS into a new platform that will now allow us to provide you with some of these GIS tools. I'm going to go over 3 of the tools that we're in the middle of development of, and we're hoping to have released around the same time as the new website. And the first one I'm going to get into is a service line lookup tool, which pertains a lot to the lead and copper that you just heard about before. In this tool, you'll be able to search for your address, click on the service, and it will show you which information we currently hold in our GIS. Visually, I have color coded it to have the services show 3 different categories: lead, needs further investigation, and not lead. When we state that it's lead, it means that your service material may contain lead. Some of the service materials in our system that contain lead are obviously lead, iron pipes with a lead lining, an old iron pipe that has a high lead content, and a material we used to use called tubuloid up until the mid-40s or so. When we state it needs further investigation, you will be able to contact me through this tool, and we'll start an investigation on your service, which will include researching 100 years worth of historic digitized work orders, or scheduling a visual inspection when we can't find a record. However, we are currently updating all the service line information daily with those digitized work orders or any visual inspections that we find out in the field, whether it was scheduled or even if it was an emergency leak or something, we constantly update the information. You'll notice on the map that the services have a line and a highlight, and this is to help indicate both portions of a service. The thin line represents the curb to building that is owned by you, which is basically from the shutoff valve outside the curb all the way to your water meter. And the highlight represents the curb to building, which is from the water main out in the street to that same shutoff valve just outside of the road. By clicking on a service, you'll be able to see even further details than whether you have lead or not. It will give you details of what the exact material is, what the size is, the install date of both portions of the service line. And you can see an example of that on the bottom right. Once you know what your service line is made of, or if we need to do some further investigation, we still have additional resources that Rich also mentioned before. You will be able to pick up a test kit or have a Ridgewood Water employee drop off a kit at your home when you reach out to customer service. It will include instructions on how to perform the test, when to perform the test, and where to send it. The second tool pertains to hydrants. This slide is showing a current dashboard that we are using internally during hydrant inspections. And hydrant inspections normally have a very little impact on your water service or quality, and it's primarily performed to make sure that the hydrant is fully functioning. We typically perform these inspections through the spring and summer during normal working hours. I'm going to provide you with a very similar dashboard to what you see here, except it will be pertaining to hydrant flushing that we usually do in the fall. We do this in the fall because of the supply constraints that we have in the spring and the summer, and the temperatures being too low in the winter, which can cause a lot of icing on the roads or walkways. Our flushing uses about 1.5 million gallons of water and is performed at night because the impact on your water service and quality is much greater when performing hydrant flushing than hydrant inspections. We use a lot less water during inspections, and we also use a much lower rate of flow. With the flushing dashboard, you'll also be able to see when the hydrants are being flushed live. They will turn from green to red. And when you zoom in on your property, you will also have not just a route number that your home is in, but below that, you will see an estimated schedule that will give you an idea within a day or so of when we believe we'll be in your area. The last tool I'm going to show you today is something that should be very familiar to you if you've ever had an electrical outage. So if you go on to PSE&G or Orange and Rockland's website, you'd usually be able to type in your address or your account, and you'd be able to see if there's been any outages called in your area. And if not, you'd be able to call it in, and then you'll see it show up on the map. So on this tool, with this tool, you'll be able to see both emergency and planned outages. They'll be displayed along with the exact location of an event, and it will also highlight any of the customers that are affected. Some of the examples that will be shown on this tool will be main breaks, main replacements, valve installs, maintenance to our system, or even boil water notices. Once you spot an event on the map, you'll be able to click on it. You'll be able to see the event type, the event start date, the end date, the event time, or any relevant notes or attachments. The attachments can include things like notices that we currently already hand out to customers when we know they're going to be out of water. That's displayed on the bottom right. But we'll also be able to include things like pictures or videos, anything that we feel would be helpful for you to understand what we're doing out in the field. All of these tools are also going to be coming with how-to videos that will assist you while using them. And I'm getting really excited. I think these tools are going to be very helpful for everybody. And that's really all I have for this afternoon. And I'm going to give it back to Rich.
Thank you, Neil. Again, it shows that there's a lot of new things that are coming to the customer's dashboard for their ability to see more of what we're doing, how we do it. The important part for me, you touched on it too, that this system's been here for 30 years, but never until now has it been so important for us to pay attention to our assets. We have pipelines that have been in the ground for in some cases, 100 years. So now we're able to kind of track that age, know when things need to be replaced, and make the best use of the ratepayers' dollar in upgrading the system. So very important work that you and your team does.
Thank you.
So up next, we're going to talk to Bill Bierwas. Bill is the Assistant Superintendent for Ridgewood. He heads up our compliance division, filling in for licensed operator, running distribution, and much, much more. Bill's going to talk about distribution, then he's going to lead us into PFAS, our important topic of the day, and Dan's going to also assist him on that. So I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Rich, and thanks everyone for joining on this beautiful day. What I wanted to talk about first was something we don't commonly highlight at our open houses or community forums. This is the distribution division. These crews, their work is just as vital to the safe, clean drinking water that is provided to your homes. These are the crews in the trenches, digging and making repairs to the distribution network, despite heat, rain, even snow. So what do these crews do on a daily basis? Despite COVID in 2020, our distribution division repaired 39 water main breaks, 41 service line repairs and/or replacements, and a total of 451 work orders were created and completed. Crews are also responsible for compliance with all aspects of the Water Accountability Act. This is a law passed by New Jersey Senate, which established new requirements for public water systems. This included asset management and overall system maintenance. To comply with these new regulations, distribution crews have GPS located and installed brass ID tags on all 1,751 Ridgewood Water owned hydrants. Crews have located, cleaned valve boxes, and checked operation of over 3,400 distribution valves. This effort includes hundreds of valves that were paved over by various towns during street resurfacing projects. Distribution is also responsible for annual testing, repair, and flushing of all 1,751 fire hydrants and 12 emergency interconnections. Next slide, please. So in 2020, Ridgewood Water initiated in-house efforts to replace 580 linear feet of undersized and beyond useful life water main on Hudson Street in Ridgewood. 3 quotes were solicited for the replacement, and prices ranged from $147,500 all the way up to $300,000. Distribution staff completed the entire project for $89,500, including base pave, for a savings of over $58,000. In 2020, Ridgewood Water also contracted On-Q Construction to replace over 4,100 linear feet of water main. Another 2,000 linear feet of water main is scheduled to be replaced in-house throughout 2021. Just to put that into perspective, that's a grand total of just under 2 miles of pipe installed in less than 2 years. Next slide, please. Towards the end of 2020, Ridgewood Water staff identified 2 damaged valves during the routine valve inspection program. These valves crossed Route 208, and replacement required coordination with the NJDOT, Wyckoff Police Department, the treatment division, and various local traffic details. Each 16-inch valve weighed over 1,250 pounds without the fittings, and to date is the largest in-house valve replacement performed by Ridgewood Water staff. Next slide, please. I'll turn this over to Rich for the intro on PFAS and the master plan.
Sure. Thanks, Bill, and thanks for highlighting distribution. I know in addition to the Hudson Street main, you had replaced mains in a couple other towns last year as well. And everything we're talking about here today is come forward in response to our requirements to comply with the new Water Quality Accountability Act, which is a New Jersey law that requires us to turn valves, to replace an amount of main each year, to check the fire hydrants. So it's all compliance issues, and we're trying to share the details of that with everybody. So our next important topic definitely requires an introduction is PFAS. Again, this is a new contaminant that is emerging in the water. It happens that it has been in the water for decades, but has only been able to be detected recently based to new technology. So I'm going to lead into Bill to kind of summarize it, talk about our plan, Dan's going to talk about some of the costs around the plan, and then we're going to get to the important questions and answers.
Thanks again, Rich. This is just a quick background on PFAS. We could probably spend the entire day talking about just this subject. So what are PFAS? These are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, of which there are hundreds of compounds. Most commonly would be PFOA, PFOS, and PFNA. They're man-made chemicals. They've been used for things such as firefighting foam, carpets, stain resistance, even paper food packaging. So they're very widespread. They're extremely persistent in the environment. They've been found in Alaska, miles and miles away from human interaction in polar bears. So we originally sent out our PFAS supplement notification in 2018 regarding PFAS. You can see it here. On this notice, it was an addition to our CCR report that comes out annually. All customers would find additional information, such as evolving science regarding PFAS, current system results, and even links to additional resources for home treatment, should you choose to take care of this in your own home. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about PFAS? We hired Mott MacDonald, a professional engineering and design firm, to perform a whole system PFAS master study. They evaluated all PFAS treatment strategies and quickly narrowed down the choices to GAC here on the left and a synthetic resin for PFAS removal. So what are the benefits and to each? GAC has many full-scale drinking water installations. It can remove other contaminants such as organics and can be reactivated via incineration. Resin is a newer technology. It's very selective in what it removes. It tends to just remove PFAS. It is also very, it's newer technology. So they're also single use and have to be incinerated for disposal. These cannot be regenerated. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about next is our treatment centralization. So through collaborative research with key Ridgewood Water personnel, Mott MacDonald developed a plan to centralize treatment. This method will reduce the number of treatment facilities from a current 30 down to 12 points of entry. To facilitate this method, over 61,000 feet of raw water main must be installed, as well as 12 new treatment buildings. There are some important factors we looked at considering this design. Space availability is probably one of the main ones for Ridgewood Water. As some customers know, our wells are located in backyards, tiny postage stamp-sized lots. There's also workforce requirements. If we were this spread out with this many treatment facilities, we'd need to add numerous personnel to our staff. There's also seasonal operations to take into account. Our demand can go from 4 or 5, as Rich talked about, in the winter, all the way up to 17, 18 million gallons in the summer. We have to be able to not only meet that, but treat that water. And there's also, you got to give design consideration to anything that comes out in the future, any of the emerging contaminants. Next slide, please. So presently there is one GAC treatment facility in operation, providing PFAS-free water to the system. There are 5 additional plants currently under design, and an additional 7 treatment plants will begin later this year. 3 more plants are to be completed and operational by 2023. Lastly, all plants will be operational by 2026. So now I'll pass this over to Dan Timoney, our business manager. He's going to talk about funding this endeavor.
Thank you, Bill. So let's talk about costs. How do we fund the capital improvements and expenses associated with PFAS removal and treatment? As a reminder, Ridgewood Water has filed a complaint against some of the manufacturers of PFAS chemicals, but it will take years for the litigation to work its way through the court system, and there are no guarantees as to the result of that litigation. While we certainly will be looking to see if any funds are made available in the future at the state or the federal level, there are none today. So we wish that we had other options available to us, but right now we have to absorb these costs of operation, which will be reflected in future rates. So We thought, rather than raising the volume rates by some amount, that we would hire an independent rate consultant to assist with the development and financial calculation of a PFAS-specific surcharge to fund remediation and necessary system changes, as was just discussed. We will continue to utilize the services of the independent rate consultant each year to recalculate the upcoming year's required PFAS surcharges. Essentially, we have separated out PFAS-related costs. Sorry, go back one slide, Neil. Both capital and operating in our budget process to be as transparent as possible regarding the projected rates of costs of treatment. That surcharge would be offset by any grant funds or legal recovery that is made by Ridgewood Water for the treatment of PFAS. And obviously, we would keep our consumers updated on any changes to that litigation and any grants that we were able to receive to mitigate those costs. Next slide, Neil. Okay, so what does this mean for you, our customers, right now? Beginning with the third quarter bill of 2021, you will see the addition of a PFAS surcharge on your bills. There is actually a notification on the second quarter bill. Some of you may have already received it based on the billing cycle that details what that surcharge will be. Sorry, the phone is ringing and I don't know why. I apologize for that. Okay. So what does this mean for you, our customers, right now? In terms of the charges that you're going to be seeing for a 5/8 meter, we are looking at more than 90% of our system who has the small 5/8 inch meter, which means a quarterly charge of $3.30. So how are those fees calculated? It is based on the maximum flow rate that customers can actually take from the water system based on demand. So the larger the meter size you have in your house or business, the more the quarterly charge is going to be going forward. Again, more than 90%, I believe it's 92% of the system is the 5/8 meter, which is $3.30 per quarter. So that will be the rate for this fiscal year. Next slide, Neil. Okay. And in terms of the forward-looking projections, again, these are very rough projections based on meter size alone, and they will be recalculated each year based on projected capital costs and expenses associated with only those costs that pertain to PFAS. You can see on the chart that the surcharge projections increase significantly beginning with 2023 and 2024 as those projects move from the design phase to the actual build phase. So let's again look at the 5/8 inch meter since that kind of pertains to the most customers in the system. 2021, $3.30 per quarter. 2022, $12.44 per quarter. In 2023 and 2024, that could scale up to as much as $38.43 and $54.54. We are obviously hoping that there are funding streams made available to the utility in the interim that would obviously mitigate any of those costs that we see, any grants that we receive, any funds made available at the federal level, or that from New Jersey State. We would certainly be reflecting those and in our annual recalculation of those costs. We would be reducing those amounts. But as of now, these are some very, very rough projections that we see. And so our plan is to make our customers aware every year. We encourage everybody to participate in our budget process. We do notify our customers, and we will do so going forward using WaterSmart and the new website as to the times of any and all budget hearings. And we really do, would encourage people to engage as it pertains to this budget process. Just so everyone is aware as well, we have contacted and reached out to all elected representatives that we can about this issue. We've been raising the profile of this issue in our service area now for several years. And, we're hopeful that as this kind of gains prominence, that we might have some other options available. But right now, these are costs that we do need to absorb as a utility.
All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Bill. Definitely glad you brought up the recovery portion of that, Dan. As a ratepayer myself, when you see the numbers, it's rather alarming. But I know we're all doing everything we can to obtain grants, the legal action that's ongoing, and any path that's available for cost recovery. Just recently, all 4 municipalities supported us on a congressional grant request for a local congressman, Gottheimer. We're very hopeful for that and his help. So anything that will come in from those type of programs will go directly against those costs you outlined. All right, so with that, we're gonna jump right into the question and answer portion. Again, there's a bunch of questions in Q&A that are typed in. Additionally, if you want to verbally say a question, I believe there is the raise hand function. But before I even do that, I just want to note, and thank all the presenters again. You all did a great job of outlining different parts of the presentation. This is an important year for Ridgewood Water. It's our 100th anniversary, 100 years of being in service to the Borough of Glen Rock, Borough of Midland Park, Township of Wyckoff, and the Village of Ridgewood. And it's clear from what was outlined today that Ridgewood Water is in a good place to move forward for the next century of operation for this utility. So with that, I'm going to move over to question and answers here. Okay. All right, so our first question is from Graham. Graham asked a very simple question, but a very important one. He wants to know if my tap water is safe to drink. So I think I'll take that question unless anybody else wants to raise their hand. So Graham, again, like I said, a great question, and actually it wasn't asked in the last session. I wish it was. So this is a little bit of a then and now answer. So before PFAS, Ridgewood Water is in compliance with all safe drinking water requirements. You could say the water was safe. We met all the requirements of the State Department of Environmental Protection and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. But with the introduction of PFAS regulation that occurred last year in the spring of 2020, and it becomes effective with 2023 is when we have to have treatment in place, you could say that the water is no longer safe. These PFAS contaminants are in the water. As I mentioned earlier, they've been there for decades. We just now have the technology to detect them. And that's why we're holding events like this to make the public aware that the PFAS is in the water, to understand what it is, where it comes from, and what we're doing about it. It's unfortunate for us as a utility and for you as the consumer that we have to bear the cost of this. We didn't put this in the water. The consumer didn't put it in the water. Nobody knew that these compounds were contaminants at the time when they were utilized in industry and commercially by residents and by everybody in the United States and across the world. So that's why we're seeking these cost recovery efforts. The good thing to know about PFAS, though, the primary method of effect to human is ingestion. There's very little exposure through household uses such as showering, bathing, laundry, and dishwashing that's been found to be not significant. We're required to meet the new standard. There are 3 compounds in particular that are now regulated. It's PFOA, PFOS, and PFNA. They've been added to the class of contaminants that we have to treat for. PFOA is the primary one that we found in all our groundwater wells. It's at very low levels, but they're high enough that they will exceed the new maximum contaminant level that DEP has set out. That's why we have to do the treatment. The levels that DEP set were developed based on protection over individual's lifetime of exposure. That's on the basis of an individual drinking 2 liters or half a gallon of the water per day. On average, it was based on a 154-pound person. With that being said, again, we didn't put this in the water. We have to treat for it. We have to comply. So we're moving forward with this program. And I ask anybody to please reach out to us with any further questions on that. It's a very important topic and one that there's lots more to come with education as we learn more from the state and the State Department of Health. Regarding ingestion, there are alternate means of drinking water. Of course, there's bottled water, but you want to make sure that bottled water doesn't have PFAS in it. It's not labeled, but you want to call the manufacturer. There are filters that are available. We have a series of them listed with a link on our website. You want to make sure it's an NSF approved filter. Primarily, if you have a reverse osmosis system in your home, that removes it. There are several stage filters that have charcoal in them that also remove it. But again, use our links and feel free to reach out to us about that. So I'm going to move on to the next question is from Celeste. Celeste asks, cloudy, dirty water coming out of the faucet. What does it mean and why? Where is it coming from? So I'm guessing that's probably a Ryan or a Bill question. If either one you want to take that.
Sure, I'll snag this one quick. I'll take the first one. So cloudy water is most likely indicative of entrained water. So the easiest way to determine that is to open your faucet, put it into like a clear glass, and let that water settle. If it's settling up, it means it's air. If it's settling down, it means you have a little bit of sediment in the water. So what would cause these two types of issues? Number one would be like an interior leak. If you have a leak, you could be getting air into your line that's causing that entrained air. It could also be the local fire department in the area using a hydrant that stirred up the main. Even high usage irrigation, things like that could stir up the water main. So my first piece of advice is put it in that glass, let it settle out, see if it's air. If it persists past the day, give us a call. We'll come over. We'll definitely take a look and try and figure out what that issue is for you.
Hey, Celeste, I also have a little something to add for you as well. With having all this information and data at my fingertips, I see where you live, close to 208, and you also happen to be in a very unusual situation where your water main that supplies your service lines happens to run between you and your neighbor. And then it dead ends with a hydrant. So earlier in this presentation, when you saw me speak about hydrant flushing and water main maintenance, you're in an area that once a year when we go to your home and we flush it, that should hopefully clean up a lot of your dirty water issues that you may have. But over the year, it may start building up again because there is no loop of the water main in your area. It literally ends with that hydrant that's in front of your house.
Right. All right. Thank you both. And Celeste, definitely, please, if that continues, give us a call or email us and we'll investigate that further. Celeste has another question too. She says to pay for all these new implementations and dashboards, where does that cost come from and to whom? I don't know if Dan, maybe you want to take that.
Sure, absolutely. So these are things that we've been planning for several years. They are very cost effective. They're actually very inexpensive on a per customer basis. They are reflected in our operating budget. So those expenses are listed out. We go through council approval for every one of these items. And we have talked about the ways in which the utility might actually save some money in addition to certainly our customers. For example, I'll take WaterSmart. We have had significant concerns regarding leaks from customers over the years. Customers wish that they had better access to data in that interim period between build reads on a quarterly basis. So if you're 60 days out from a leak occurring, or frankly, if it's even worse, if you're a full quarter that has gone and you didn't know you had a running toilet, or you didn't know you had a leak in your irrigation system, that's been happening for a significant period of time. And we find that that does cost our customers a huge sum of money. The American Water Works Association also details that the flapper in your toilet fails on average between every 5 and 7 years. So in your house and any customer's house, toilets are a very, very common, the most common source of leaks in the service area. And so by having these tools, we are offering our customers the ability to save some money on leaks and leak alerts. It also helps us because that's water that's getting pushed into the water supply and then frankly wasted. So on the conservation side, we're making advances there too. The website is being done very inexpensively, and we're very happy with how that's progressing. And then in terms of the GIS system, we've always had a GIS system. We've always had to pay for a GIS system. This is something that's required from the DEP of all water utilities. And what you are seeing in Neil's dashboards and those tools that are going to be made available to folks, those are things that, again, we have kind of had on our own internally, but we needed a more nimble online-based platform to be able to push those out to our customers. And so while it looks like there are tons of new tools happening, these are a lot of things that have been planned for over time. Cost is certainly one of the things that we look at for every one of these issues, but this is also how we maintain compliance and good communication with our customers. So the costs are definitely worth it from our vantage point, and frankly, we're really excited for our customers to see the benefits of these as they roll out shortly as well.
Right. Again, a great question. Thank you, Dan. We have a question from Stanley. Do you use leak detection systems to identify small leaks and wirelessly notify rigid water? The advantage is planned small repairs instead of emergency large ones. Maybe Bill, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So presently we do a conventional leak detection survey, which means we hire a company. They come in with those acoustic detectors and they do the whole system on a one-time basis. What is the advantage of that? Gets our unaccounted for water down pretty low. So to go to an unconventional system like you described, with 275 miles of pipe, we need an acoustic detector every 500 feet. They're about $3,000 a piece. The cost benefit just isn't there yet. Our unaccounted for water is incredible. We're one of the top ranking utilities in the state for unaccounted for water, which we're really proud of. So at this point, we are sticking with the conventional survey. If our unaccounted for water does creep up a little higher, that is some technology that we hope to look into.
Great, thank you, Bill. And I think Stanley has another one that relates to you. Are you able to coordinate water main repairs with road and other utility repairs? There are obvious advantages to doing all the work at once.
Absolutely. Another great question. That is probably our number one consideration. So on a year-by-year basis, we get a list from other towns on what streets are being paved that year. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not enough of a notice. So we try and reach out for like a 5-year plan, and then coordinate with the towns regarding that paving. All of our jobs in-house thus far have been on streets that were about to be paved. It's a huge cost savings for us, and that gets passed on through our rates. Unfortunately, with our PFAS master plan, with the 61,000 feet of raw water main, there are some newly paved streets that we're going to have to go across to get that amount of main installed, but it's needed for the treatment that's got to be done for the PFAS.
Great, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
So Pamela has a question. What kind of places have 4-inch meters? Stan, you want to take that one?
Sure. So it's generally very large. There are only a couple in the system, as you saw in that chart earlier. But it's generally places that use lots and lots of water, either in a community setting where you then have meters that are branched off of that. Frankly, we see many more 2-inch meters in the system. The 2-inch meters that you see and that use a lot of water are actually Valley Hospital. Those are much more common, and they are buzzing all day long with water usage. The 4-inch meters are really, really rare, but they are certainly not of the residential variety.
Great, thank you. And David has a question. How has your planning changed for the increasing variability of climate and the impacts to water resources? How are you managing for the impact of climate change? I don't know who wants to take that one. I'll take it if nobody wants to. So David, again, great question, and one that we've been very concerned about for years now. And as you could tell from our presentation, water usage is a big concern of ours for our system. Our seasonal swing from winter to summer is great. It's more than 3 times, and we're depleting the aquifer. And of course, with climate change and the changes in weather, we go from summers that are either very hot and dry to ones that are cool and wet, and that all affects usage. Of course, the wet and cool summers are great for recharging the aquifer, but no sooner after that do you have a dry, hot summer where it's depleted. So everything we talked about tonight and the tools we're offering customers is to heat off that usage and get demand down. And we are seeing a decrease. The last few years, there's been a gradual decrease in overall usage on an annual basis, which is good. But we know we have a lot of work to do. Just on the climate change side of things itself, and any improvement we do, we try to look towards that, capital improvement and construction to make sure that we're having a net effect on that as well. That we're not creating a situation that can make things worse. So it's always a thought in our minds with everything that we do, and our goals to increase conservation and lower usage in the system. Overall, that will provide us better efficiency and protection of our water resource in the future. So
Rich, I'm going to chime in real quick
go
to Pam's question, just having done a little bit of research here. Glen School in Ridgewood is an example of a 4-inch meter.
Great. Okay. Yeah, a lot of schools will have a larger size service line or meter.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to jump back. Stanley had another question. Is any consideration been given to microplastics in the water? I don't think we have microplastics in the water, but I'll leave it to Ryan or Bill.
Yeah, we don't have microplastics in the water. We do test for those kind of things, but also, we have filters and check valves that go before our pumps, and those things are gonna negatively affect our pumps and our operations. So, we have, if there are any, they are going to be taken out before they enter the distribution system, because all that stuff would clog up the pumps and really give us a hard time on the maintenance side for treatment. So, like I said before, though, we do test for, microplastics and VOC contamination and so on and so forth. So, that is something that you wouldn't have to be concerned with.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Ryan said, primarily the only place I think we would see that is through the purchased surface water. The majority of groundwater doesn't have any influence of microplastics, from contamination and that nature. It's mostly surface water. But again, a great question. Pamela asked another question. Is the litigation still in the discovery phase? So I can't comment on the litigation. I could say it's been ongoing now for, I think it's 2 years or more. And we're hopeful that it's getting through and that we'll get to a point of an end where we could have a decision and move forward with our efforts here at Ridgewood Water. So Stanley has another question. Do home filtration systems, filters or reverse osmosis, remove PFAS? And I think we answered a little bit of that earlier, but maybe Dan or Bill or Ryan, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The reverse osmosis will definitely take out PFAS, and filters such as Brita filters, or those pure, I think they're called Pure One water or something like that, filters that you put on your spigots. They use the same technology that we're actually using. They use a granular activated carbon. So basically what it is just a ion exchange kind of thing, science wise, and that's how we remove the PFAS in our system. And if you guys want to reduce it further, you could, look to Brita filters or reverse osmosis filters, whatever you would like to implement into your own home. So those definitely will help.
And again, the key there is to make sure it's an NSF. You'll see those letters stamped on the box, NSF approved filter. And if you actually go to the NSF website, they'll rate the filters that they have approved, and you can see the levels of contaminant they remove. So if it's something like PFAS, they'll tell you what they've tested it for, what level it removes it down to. Something like lead, the same thing. You want to look it up, make sure it's removing all the lead. So a lot of good resources out there, and you want to do your homework and make sure you buy the right product. But Ryan's right. A lot of the technology is very similar to what we're using, except ours is much larger in scale. So we have a comment from Pamela, another question. With respect to PFAS, is bottled water any safer than Ridgewood water? I guess that depends on the bottled water.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So drinking water on our end is a lot more regulated in comparison to bottled water. So we have much stricter standards, and we had to abide by really tight regulations in order to ensure that we're providing you guys the best water quality that we can. Bottled water, they are dealing with a different form of government, than we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So they have different standards. I'm not really, too well versed in that field with their regulations, but I do know that they are regulated much easier, I guess, than what we are regulated. So, I mean, I would argue that tap water is much safer than bottled water due to the regulations that we're, have to be held to rather than what bottled water is held to. But I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it's definitely worth some more research, but that, just to give you perspective, that's what we had to deal with in comparison to what, bottled water companies have to deal with.
And and as a consumer, you almost you got to make the informed decision about how you use water. And we, like Ryan said, we have to meet a lot of regulations. Bottled water is governed by a whole different board. But for the most part, bottled waters are filtered with reverse osmosis. Some aren't. But to what level they do it at, how much they get out, I couldn't tell you that. You'd have to ask the manufacturer. But for the most part, from my perspective, being a customer myself, I like to control what I drink. So I like to use the Ridgewood water and, filter it to remove the extra contaminants. Especially if you don't like the chlorine taste, a simple carbon filter takes chlorine down to zero. We have to put chlorine in the water to disinfect it. We put it at high levels now because there's a lot of bacterial contamination in the water. But it takes and kills everything. And if you put a simple charcoal filter in, you take that chlorine out and don't have to bother with that taste or smell. So we have another question from Celeste. With these contaminants in our water, what are the causes to our bodies and our children? She elaborates some examples. But I can answer the health effects question, and this is some of the information we're going to be providing in the future as well when we notify the public. And this is coming right from the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Health Resources. So again, DEP developed these standards based on a lifetime exposure, and there's other documentation how to calculate the actual limit. But on the basis that something like PFOA, which is primarily found in the water, and I'm reading this right from the DEP and Department of Health language, some people who drink water containing PFOA in excess of the DEP limit over many years could experience problems with blood serum cholesterol levels, liver, kidney, immune system, or male reproductive system. Over many years of ingestion, PFOA can also increase the risk of testicular or kidney cancer. Over many years of ingestion, females may cause them to have developmental delays in the fetus or an infant. For PFOA, which is the other contaminant, which we do have detections of, but they're not as high as PFOA, and I think in only 1 or 2 wells exceed the limit. Again, here's some people who drink water containing PFAS in excess of the MCL over many years could experience problems with their immune system, kidney, liver, or endocrine systems. For females, drinking water containing PFAS or PFOS in excess of the MCL over many years may cause developmental effects and problems with the immune system, liver, or endocrine system in the fetus or an infant. Some of these developmental effects can persist through childhood. Again, those sources are from DEP and the Department of Health. You can find this all in the flyer we sent out, the links to this in the flyer we sent out, and on our website. So this is serious stuff. But again, like I said, it's an informed decision. It's based on lifetime exposure, but there are real health effects. Please feel free to reach out to us to follow up. I wouldn't tell anybody to shy away from filtering the water until we have all the treatment online or using bottled water as an alternate. But again, you got to make sure that filter is certified and that bottled water meets or exceeds those requirements and exceeds what we're doing regulatory wise, because we're at a very high stringent standard. Okay, so moving on, let's see if there's more here that I know I have some questions to add as well. So David asks, with rising temperatures, we're likely to see more irrigation. Have you considered a pricing model to encourage conservation? I was concerned to hear the aquifers being depleted. So Dan, maybe you want to take that one?
Sure. So I think first, we should talk about smart controllers and our smart controller program, because it kind of weaves into this. So for folks who have irrigation systems, obviously there are water regulations that dictate the days and times during which our customers are allowed to water their lawns. You correctly point out that irrigation, will increase as things might be drier, with higher temperatures. And so one of the ways to address that is the implementation of a smart controller with a rain sensor for irrigation systems. They can be as advanced as incorporating soil probes, whereby for certain that your lawn is only being watered if it really needs it, and it should be programmed accordingly. We have launched a smart controller certification program and the details are on our website. But if you were to install a smart controller with your irrigation system, certify that all of the equipment is up and running, send us some pictures of the equipment, and submit your application, which is free. We essentially absolve that property from water regulations because we know that the lawn is only being watered when it actually requires it, and no more. It is very frustrating for us as a utility to have our technicians in the field driving around and seeing properties that are watering in the rain. That is something that we really want to avoid going forward. In terms of pricing models that encourage conservation, I assume what you're referencing is sort of tiered pricing models. And they have been implemented in some places. For us, it's not really an option in the present because we, as we referenced earlier in the presentation, actually have to purchase water to augment our existing water supply during those summer periods. So right now, we're really just kind of taking the hard conservation route and really, frankly, through a public education campaign, hoping to change behaviors. And perhaps in the future, more people will be, and we've actually already seen it this year, installing and implementing smart controllers on the property. But in terms of like a tiered pricing model, it's something that we might perhaps look at in the future. But right now, that really wouldn't be an option when we still have to purchase water from other utilities to meet that peak consumer demand and that irrigation swing.
Great, thank you, Dan. I think we have like 5 minutes left for questions. So if anybody else has any questions, please type them in. While we're waiting for that, I'll ask a couple others just based on the conversation. Neil, a question on lead service lines. Do you know how many do we have in the system and how are we inventorying?
Well, that's kind of a more complicated question. As you saw, we have the dashboard set up in the GIS for our customers to take a look. With that dashboard, that is taking into account any service that is iron, any service that is lead lined, any service that is lead, with the possibility of having lead. Actual known sites, I think Bill has a better number for the exact number of real lead sites that we have. But currently, if we were to just lump everything together, iron services, lead services, anything that potentially can be lead, we're hovering around 300 services out of our 20,000.
Great, thank you. And Dan, a question relative to Water Smart and Visa payments. When will those be available to customers?
The answer to that is May. So we're very excited about the rollout of this program. We expect the welcome letter to go out to our customers as early as the last week in April or the beginning of May. And from there, we should be seeing the formal launch. So yeah, keep an eye out for a notification in your mailbox.
I know I can't wait. Pay my bill, credit card. So Bill, a question for you. What are the next contaminants of concern? I mean, I know we're talking about PFAS, we talked about lead, but what's the next thing that's going to come? And what is Ridgewood Water doing about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I discussed this a little bit with the master plan. So one of the things we want to look at is through that master plan, are we going to have the space to treat everything that's coming out, everything that the state's looking at regulating? We have to make sure we not only think about investing this money now, but what it's going to do 50 years from now. So we looked at things like 1,2,3-TCP, 1,4-dioxane. We also looked at hexchrome, which is the Aaron Brockovich chemical. And we also looked at some PFAS replacement chemicals. So these companies got smart. They found out if they changed just one molecule or one chain, they could release a PFAS chemical. So we looked at PFBS, Generation X, and I'm definitely happy to report that they're non-detect. We're looking good. We have very, very low levels of 1,4-dioxane, well below anything they're even thinking of regulating. But the rest of these chemicals are non-detect.
Great, thank you, Bill. All right, so I got time for one last question, and we have one from Celeste. She says, refrigerator, changeable water, and ice filters. What should I look for on the filter to ensure the water is safe?
Like Rich was saying, the NSF filters, those are definitely, something that you want to look for. Anything with like activated carbon or, lead and copper protection, obviously that's going to be something that you're going to want to look for on your products for those. But if it's NSF certified, it's most likely going to be very good for your home house filters, and it'll essentially take out all the contaminants that you'd be looking for. So
the only other thing I wanted to add on, it's not specific to filtering, but just so consumers are aware, we're trying to manage the amount of PFAS that goes out in the system on a daily basis. And what I mean by that is we know what the concentration is at each well. So the wells that have the higher concentrations are being kept off unless we absolutely need to turn them on, which is basically the summer months due to peak demand. So in a way, the consumer has a way to help us here too. As people use less, we conserve more and we put less PFAS out into the distribution system. So that's an additional thing we're doing. But in-house filtration is definitely a means. If you can't obtain it in the form of a refrigerator filter, you can put an inline system similar to what you might have under your sink prior to that refrigerator tap off your water line as well. That could filter that water further. So with that, I want to end. I think we had Awesome questions. Great answers. I want to thank the panel again. I want to thank the participants for taking time out of this beautiful day and your busy schedule. I just want you to know that we are here for you. Please feel free to call us, email us. This topic is as new to us as it is to you, although we've been dealing with it now and diving more into it. We're doing everything we can to eliminate this throughout the entire system. It's unfortunately going to take a lot of time and money, but at the end of the day, the system will be prepared to celebrate its next 100 years in the future. So please reach out to us with any further questions. Again, that number you can reach it at is 201-670-5520, or you can email us at cswater@ridgewood.net. I appreciate everybody's time. And,
Hey, Rich, can I add one more thing? Just
Yes.
to correct my answer that I gave to you. I looked at my numbers a little bit more. That for the amount of lead services, we have about 300 on our side that we know about. It's about 900 on the customer side that we know about.
Okay.
And again, we're still working on updating the information from the historic work orders. We probably have about 8,000 more services that we still need to catalog. Most of those are in the Wyckoff area, which is much newer and will have a much, much lower chance of having lead. So I'm anticipating the vast majority of those 8,000 we're still trying to get in are going to be copper. They're not going to be an iron or anything. But I just wanted to clarify that.
And Neil, outside the contact information I gave, how does someone contact you if they want to look up what type of material they have?
Sure. Well, pretty soon, hopefully this link will be up there for my interactive map, which will have my contact information. But you can reach me on my email. That would be N for my first name, Neil, and then Gallone, Gallone, at ridgewoodnj.net. And anyone that's interested in getting this information before I put it up on the website, I'll be able to get it to them rather quickly.
Right, thank you. And again, I think I misspoke about our email, but again, the number is 201-670-5520, or by email at cswater@ridgewoodnj.net. All right, thank you, everybody, and have a great day.